Hi, this is John. A week or two ago, I did an interview with Alex Sofronas, and he did a great job. He sent me the video, and I split it into three pieces. I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to comment, like, and share. Your friends will know you're smart. Enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Sofronas, and today I'm on with John Miglautsch. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm president of the Wisconsin Direct Marketing Association. I'm also the founder of Miglautsch Marketing, have launched a lot of catalogs, have worked with about 80 different catalog companies. I pioneered the use of computers in marketing, believe it or not, and especially machine learning.
What about have you done holdout testing in your time running, these analytics, basically looking at, let's say we're mailing people and for every 10 people we're mailing, one is not going to get our piece of
Oh, yeah.
mail,
I'm
and
a huge
then
believer in holdout testing. It's really the way to prove a channel value. It's the only real way, if in my opinion. You look at what happened with Uber, when they accidentally stopped all their digital advertising for a week, and it was just perfectly nothing, no impact whatsoever. Now that doesn't mean over time there wouldn't be an impact. You got to be careful with that. I've had clients who I show them an order curve and I show them how when a catalog mails and it goes down and then there's wave after wave after wave and you get this sort of baseline activity that each catalog sort of layers on top of as it peters out. And the accounting people will come to the conclusion that, well, we've mailed a bunch of catalogs in the first 2 quarters, let's just coast the rest of the year. Well, when you stop, different things happen. It doesn't
mhm.
work the same. But that said, that there's a caveat. That's the best way. And with Musician's Friend, they were owned by Guitar Center, who believed every guitar that got bought through the catalog was stolen from their store.
Hmm.
So they hated the catalog. They always wanted to cancel it. And they were owned by a private equity company in Dubai or someplace. So they had no direct mail context at all. And so they would always say, why is this company spending $10 million a year on these catalogs? Well, the answer was because they were doing $500 million worth of sales from those catalogs. It was a great deal. But every year we would, I handled all their customer circulation for 6 years, and got it kind of accidentally, kind of won the client. They were converting their ERP system and were up to their eyeballs trying to do it. And they said, we're pretty sure we can get it done in 6 months more, but could you do this for 6 months? It took 6 years.
Wow.
But anyway, so they kept us around and they liked us too. The IT department loved it that they didn't have to talk to the marketing people anymore. But the private equity firm, would be like, why are we spending this? So every year we would do, we were doing about 600,000 pieces per month, and we would have to drop out 30,000, and 10,000 would be dropped out for a month, 20,000 or 30,000 would be dropped out for a month, then 20,000 would be dropped out for another month, and then 10,000 would be dropped out. So only 10,000 were dropped out for 3 successive months,
Hmm.
right? Makes sense. And we always saw that it was well worth the expense of the catalog, comparing the downstream results of those customers versus the downstream results uh, of the ones who got mailed. Now we did have I had another client, Daniel Smith, and they had hired a bunch of young digital marketing people because they wanted to increase the number of customers, and so they sold artistic supplies. So they commissioned a lot of influencers in art, in art. painting pictures and stuff. And a, a year or so, a year and a half had gone by, and the owner, I was happened to be there working with the catalog people, and the owner said, "Why don't you go down to the basement and talk to these people and see if they know what they're doing?" Well, I found out right away that they didn't know much about business, just pure business, because they said, "Well, we spent about $1 million on this affinity program, but we've generated more than $1 million in sales, so we know we're breaking even." Well, of course, that isn't break even because you've got cost of goods, right? You've got cost of order processing, plus you got advertising cost, which was that they spent $1 million. If you spend $1 million and you only get $1 million, you're not breaking even, not in anything, right? And so uh, it was clear they didn't know what they were doing. But the scariest part came later. I talked to the owner and I said, what I'm concerned about is they they recommended that the influencers offer 20% off, and you don't generally discount price. So I wonder when you do that, which is another question on the A/B split story. If we gave 50% off, what does that do to our customer base? Does it train them to do that? So I buy a lot from Land's End. I love Land's End. They mail me right here at the office. See? And on here it says 40% off, right? So I went online and I thought, well, good, I'll get 40% off. There was a 50% off. Woohoo! So they just undermined the catalog because now it looks like, I just happened to show up and they'll track me to that offer and I will not be, who knows? Depends on how good they are, right? Depends on if they do a match back. Depends on if they know that I basically have been with them since the 70s. But anyway, so now I know to wait for a 50% off, right, which they will give me. And so what we did was we took, and this is again not valid, it's not an A/B split, but we said, okay, what was a cohort before these guys started doing this kind of marketing? What was a new customer worth in the next 6 months? So we'll take a calendar year's worth of customers and we'll see what they were worth for the next 6 months. See, it makes sense? And then we'll take this last 12 months where they've been giving away the store and see what those people are worth in repeat buy. Just the repeat, not the first time buy. Well, it turned out they were worth about 25% of what a new customer used to be worth. And so we saw a lot, and this has been repeated by other consultants in other catalog companies, where a healthy company said, well, we can acquire a customer for a fraction in digital what we were acquiring from in renting lists and mailing catalogs. So let's cut out the catalog for acquisition. We'll mail the catalog to our customers. And what they found was, if they were paying attention, was they were generating just as many names as always, spending less. It's a great deal. But then how did they do downstream? And they got into this spiral. And so a lot of them actually went under because all of a sudden they weren't bringing in the same quality of customer. Scary thing. We also have found consistently that if a catalog uses Amazon to acquire new customers, that those customers are maybe not even worth mailing at all, that they're really a one and done. When I asked, my wife was complaining about a dress she bought from Amazon this morning because the colors weren't as vibrant as it had looked online, and I could tell she was right. But screens are that way. Screens can be made to pop and made to not pop. They're very, 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 very careful in catalogs to portray those colors as they exist in the real world. I mean, we used to just drive ourselves nuts. And now Quad, who I think prints Land's End, I can find out, Quad actually does the photography for a lot of catalogs. They do for LL Bean, I know that. I'm not sure about Land's End, but I know they do it for Colony brands. And so we've got we got the photographer and the printer, the same electronic thing carrying along and making sure that when it gets to you, it looks like what it really is, which is more difficult on Amazon. But my point is that my wife said I bought it from Amazon. Now, did she buy it from Land's End doing closeouts on Amazon? I don't know. She probably doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
My kids who buy on Amazon a lot, they don't think about the vendor, the merchant who made the thing. They don't think about the brand even, mostly. They just think, oh, I bought it on Amazon. So we've lost some of that downstream value. And if you're a cataloger acquiring customers that way, those customers do not think of you the same way as the customer that got your catalog in the mail. But yeah, big fan of holdout testing, even more a fan of uniques testing. And I'm a huge fan of in the mail, not back testing.
I like that.
Back testing is a fiction.
Hmm.
And I've been fired because of it.
Tell us more about that.
Well, it's not, it took me a while to figure it out because I always modeled for the mail. We'd go in the mail, we'd get the results, we'd have real results, tangible results. And well, that was at Musician's Friend where they had tested me 11 times and I keep beating the pants off of everybody else. But by then they'd finally converted their ERP and they fired everybody in Medford where the company was founded, and they moved the company down to LA because they said they could hire better people that way. And they got a new VP of marketing and he wanted a new database company. He couldn't believe somebody in Milwaukee would know what they were doing. And so uh, I got a call and they said, you're fired. And then I got a call a year later saying, the results have gone to crap since you were fired. Did they test against you? And I said, well, they told me they did a back test. Well, a back test is my model, my first try at a model, with all of the spurious correlation left in, right? So when I validate and process and throw out the silly stuff before we mail, when I do that, right, it degrades the apparent lift on the reports, so it'll say the model is worth this when I start, and gradually it's getting less and less valuable, but it's getting more and more likely to work. So when you only back test, you're tweaking it so that it has the maximum lift, even if it doesn't work. It's crazy variables,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, and there isn't enough of that. There isn't enough of that reality dumped on enough models. But it's good if you can see the variables, and then at least you have some idea.
Yeah, and I think also there's that practice of splitting your data set into the test and the training sets so that, that's, I think, to reduce the likelihood of those spurious correlations. But yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're talking about sort of like the technical, you're much more on that like meritocratic side. You're playing you play things very like fairly, and I think you're very honest, and I think that sometimes that can turn people off.
I have an article out on LinkedIn that's called "Integrity as a Modeling Variable," but it's a little bit like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, or the second one even more, where the financial guys have kicked out the people who knew anything,
Mm-hmm.
and then a disaster ensues, and who's going to solve it? Is it going to be the people who know something? And that is a problem with modeling, and I think it slowed the adoption because the marketing VP doesn't understand what's going on. Well, at Lovesac, we did wonderful work of integrating their web and their digital and their direct mail, and they grew like crazy when they got this down and went public, and it's then have continued with that program that we built. But about 6 months I was there, not even 6 months, about 3 months I was there, and Patrick Santangelo was the new VP of marketing, and he said, John, from what we can tell, our biggest hurdle is that people don't know what we sell, and once they know what we offer, We compete head to head with Wayfair and Williams Sonoma and other online furniture companies. So this catalog you're helping us with is mailed to our current customers who know what we sell. Shouldn't we take that money and spend it on showing new people what we sell rather than reinforcing people who've already bought from us and already know? And I said, Patrick, that's one of the better questions I've ever been asked. It's probably one of the best, you know. Would you like to know the answer? And he was from a packaged goods company. He had no mail experience. And he said, you can know the answer? I said, yeah, you can actually know for sure. He said, how do you do that? I said, well, the way you do it is you take your couple of 100,000 that we're planning to mail, and let's not mail some of them. And we'll be very, very careful about how we, you know, don't mail some of the best ones and don't mail some of the middle ones and don't mail some of the worst ones. But the ones we were mailing, we do a highly careful holdout test and see how they do and see what's going on. And what happened was we had about a 300% EBITDA return on investment on the catalog spend. So the people who were mailed the catalog, the set of people did 300% better profitably than the people who weren't mailed. Okay. So he said, well, maybe we should keep that going. So we did, but we continued to do matchback testing. And one of the things we saw in the matchback, not in the holdup, but the bigger context, was a lot of people, a lot of next door neighbors. I mean, the guy running the matchback actually came to me and said, I see like, 123 Main Street and 125 Main Street. So it didn't match. It's not who we mailed. It's a different person, name, but it's really, really close, like the next house. Or, apartment 354 and apartment 355 in the same building, different person, places the order. So I asked Patrick, do you mind if we include those? And he said, well, run it both ways so we can see, the impact of it. And it turned out that it was a 900% EBITDA, return on investment, 900%. And it turned out that for every one repeat order we got two new orders that didn't match precisely, but matched loosely. And so we speculated that what was happening was that the catalog was getting passed along. People come over for a glass of wine and they'd say, this is a weird couch. Oh, yeah, it's really weird. In fact, you can reconfigure it and you could carry it up the stairs, even though nothing else would fit up the stairs. You could have a whole room couch. Whereas, in a really small stairway brownstone or something. And so, they'd say, well, yeah, where do you get that? Oh, I got a catalog right here, an extra one because I've been mailing them every month. It gives them a vehicle that they're not afraid to give away, just like they're not afraid to throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
They were fixing to throw it away, but since you're here, have this.
Cool.
And it's, back in the early days of computers and matching and merge purge, the argument was that it would be better, instead of mailing two catalogs on the same day to the same house, which sounds like a waste, it would be better to mail one catalog to that house and one catalog to a different house. Does that make sense? Sure. Okay. But we would test it, and it never had a better response rate. And it's like, well, how could that be possible? Well, and because what you do is, let's say you were renting 40 lists, 40 different prospect lists. Now you'd have some people getting 6, some people 5, some people were on all of those. And if you didn't merge purge them, you'd be mailing tons of catalogs repeat. But what happened was they were much more likely to pass them along. And a pass along had a much higher likelihood to generate an order than anything else. So what we learned to do is mail them in waves, and so that the number one thing that merge purge helped with was the complaints. Like, why are you sending me all these Why are you sending me 6 catalogs? And people would send them back in packs.
Hmm.
But but the reality is that good things happen when you mail people who like catalogs more catalogs. And still to this day, though we've tuned our way out of that stuff.
This has been great. I really appreciate you,
You have
speaking
to
to these,
edit it
to your
down.
history. I would love to have you on again sometime, John. This has been a
Well,
great
see if anybody
conversation.
watches it.
Oh, for sure. John, I want to thank you again for coming on the podcast. It was so fun to chat with you and learn about your history and all of these things about direct marketing and measurement and just in general data. So I want to thank you again. And thanks. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
It's the old stuff, the forgotten lore.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.